the dark secret behind the world's most loved car, the true story of the Volkswagen Beetle when we look at the history of industrial design. There are few silhouettes as instantly recognizable as the Volkswagen Beetle. With its friendly, rounded curves and its distinctive air-cooled chug, the car seems to exude a sense of innocence, nostalgia, and simplicity. It is the car of the flower power generation, the star of Disney movies, and the first car for millions of teenagers around the world. However, if we peel back the layers of paint and look beneath the charming bonnet, we find a story that is far from innocent. It is a story rooted in the darkest chapter of human history. As we investigate the origins of this mechanical marvel, we are forced to ask a difficult question. How did a machine built to fulfill the vision of a dictator become the world's most lovable car? To understand the Beetle, we must travel back to Germany in the early 1930s. This was a time of political turmoil and economic despair, but also a time of rapid industrial ambition. The concept of a Volkswagen, literally translating to people's car, was not invented by the Nazi Party, but it was hijacked by them with ruthless efficiency. At the 1933 Berlin Motor Show, the new chancellor, Adolf Hitler, announced a motorization program. He envisioned a Germany linked by high-speed autobahns, populated by affordable cars that the average working family could own. The requirements for this car were specific and incredibly demanding. It had to carry 2 adults and 3 children. It had to cruise at 100 kilometers per hour. It had to be air-cooled to prevent freezing in the German winter and boiling in the summer. Most importantly, it had to cost no more than 1,000 Reichsmarks, the price of a small motorcycle at the time. To the automotive industry, this sounded impossible. But there was one engineer who had been dreaming of such a car for years, Ferdinand Porsche. In our investigation of the Beetle's birth, the relationship between Porsche and Hitler is a critical focal point. Porsche was a brilliant engineer, arguably a genius, but his focus was purely technical, often blinding him to the moral compromises he was making. He accepted the commission. The prototypes, known as the KDF wagon, Kraft durch Freude, or Strength Through Joy, began to take shape. The design was revolutionary. The engine was placed in the rear to improve traction and maximize interior space. The shape was rounded for aerodynamics, giving it that Beetle-like appearance, though at the time critics mocked it. However, the people's car was initially a cruel illusion. The Nazi regime set up a savings scheme where workers bought stamps to save up for the car. Hundreds of thousands of Germans subscribed, pouring millions into the fund. Yet, as we dig into the archives, we find a stark reality. Not a single private citizen received a Volkswagen before the war. When World War II broke out in 1939, a massive factory in Wolfsburg, built to churn out these cars, was immediately converted for military use. The friendly Beetle chassis was modified into the Kubelwagen and the Schwimmwagen, military vehicles used to transport troops across Europe. The factory itself became a site of immense suffering, staffed largely by forced laborers and prisoners of war. This is the blood in the soil of the Beetle's history that cannot be washed away. So, how did this tool of fascism survive the collapse of the Third Reich? This is where the story takes a turn that feels almost cinematic. By 1945, the Wolfsburg factory was a bombed-out ruin. The machinery was slated to be dismantled and shipped to Britain as war reparations. However, the British car manufacturers looked at the little round car and scoffed. An official report famously stated that the vehicle did not meet the fundamental technical requirement of a motor car, claiming it was quite unattractive to the average buyer and too noisy. Ford was offered the factory for free and turned it down. The savior of the Beetle was, ironically, a British Army officer named Major Evan Hurst, assigned to manage the ruins of the factory. Hurst saw potential where others saw junk. He needed vehicles for the occupying Allied forces. He cleared an unexploded bomb found between the production lines and convinced the British military to order 20,000 cars. Hearst focused on quality, cleaning up the production process and setting up a dealership network. Under British stewardship, the Volkswagen was reborn not as a weapon of war, but as a symbol of West Germany's economic miracle, the Wirtschaftswunder. The investigation into the Beetle's global conquest takes us next to the United States in the 1950s. This was the land of massive chrome, Cadillacs and V8 engines. A tiny 40-horsepower German car seemed destined to fail. The initial reception was lukewarm at best. It was foreign, it was small, and it was associated with the recent enemy. But then came the advertising agency, Doyle Dane, Bernbach, DDB. The marketing campaign they created is studied in business schools to this day. Instead of hiding the car's size and odd looks, they celebrated them. The famous Think Small and Lemon ads used self-deprecating humor and brutal honesty. They positioned the Beetle as the smart, anti-status symbol choice. It was the car for people who didn't need to show off. This resonated deeply with a changing America. By the time the 1960s rolled around, the cultural narrative of the Beetle had flipped entirely. It was cheap, reliable, and easy to fix. It became the vehicle of choice for students, artists, and the counterculture movement. The car that was commissioned by Hitler was now painted with peace signs and flowers, driven by hippies to Woodstock. It is a transformation of meaning that is almost unparalleled in history. The Beetle became a character in itself, most notably as Herbie in the Disney movies, cementing its status as a lovable member of the family rather than just a machine. Mechanically, the Beetle remained largely unchanged for decades, which is another aspect of its legend. Its air-cooled flat-four engine was durable and simple. You could fix it with a basic toolkit. It could float on water for a short time due to its airtight construction. It handled rough terrain surprisingly well. It was a masterpiece of form follows function. As we approach the end of the 20th century in our historical review, the Beetle began to fade from the primary markets of Europe and the U.S., unable to meet modern safety and emissions standards. Production shifted to Brazil and Mexico, where it continued to serve as the taxi and family car for millions more. When the very last original Type 1 Beetle rolled off the assembly line in Puebla, Mexico in July 2003, it marked the end of a production run of over 21 million units. What can we conclude from this investigation? The Volkswagen Beetle is a testament to the complexity of history. It reminds us that technology is neutral, but the intent behind it is not. The same blueprints that were drawn up to mobilize a fascist regime eventually mobilized the world in a democratic, liberating way. It survived bombing raids, dismantling orders, and changing tastes to become the most produced car of a single design in history. The Beetle is more than metal, glass, and rubber. It is a vessel of memory. For some, it is a reminder of a dark past. For others, a symbol of freedom and adventure. It bridged the gap between enemies and generations. In the end, the people's car truly lived up to its name, just not in the way its original instigators intended. It became a car for all people, transcending borders and ideologies, leaving a tire track on history that will never be erased. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this video, learned something new, or simply want to see more content like this, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Your support truly helps the channel grow and reach more people. And if you have thoughts or ideas you'd like to share, feel free to leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next video.